Once again, we apologize for the break-in transmission there, but we are back. So we are still waiting for the Electoral Commission to tell us when it is going to announce the presidential results. Initially, they said they were going to announce it at 5 p.m. today, but they have released a statement saying that they will announce when they will inform us when they are going to announce their results. But like I said earlier, the Electoral Commission has updated us with respect to who has won which constituency. They have some less than 10 results out there announcing the candidates of some political parties who have won various constituencies. It's GhanaWeb's coverage of the 2020 presidential parliamentary elections. My name is Benefo Boabin Abrantepa. We'll move on to have a conversation with Joel Telfer of Political GH. Now, yesterday he was on the show. We looked at some constituencies and their voting pattern. We noticed that there are some constituencies that they actually do not retain MPs. They give you one term, the next term they change you. Some MPs have not been retained. They just have served one term. And at Dentown constituency, we have Yaboabena Samoa serving with one term. We go to the Prestia Huni Valley, and the Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture has also been handed just one term, as she has been kicked out by Robert Wosen Kujo of the NDC. We have the two Jinapos going to Parliament. That's a good news for the family. George Anda has been kicked out by Gisela Tete, who happens to be the sister of Hannah Tete, which I have said many are saying this is a revenge, because George Anda won when he contested Hannah Tete. Let's have a conversation with our guest, Joel, big boss. Welcome.
Sorry, I'm happy to be here.
So you have studied the results that are coming in. Yeah. Some are following the pattern that we discussed yesterday. The Adenton constituency, an interesting one. They voted Yaboabena Samoa out. Yeah. So with is it because of the works that he did there? I mean, they are not happy. Okay. Or, like Karim said earlier, the constituency is such that they feel 1 year you should be able to do enough. If you don't do what is expected, they kick you out. What do you think made him lose?
I mean, I get the sense that what we see in a Denton constituency particularly is a reflection of what we thought was the larger demographic of the people in that particular area. And so for the Denton constituency, for instance, the NDC has been better performing in the area as opposed to the MPP, which has won the seats just about 2 times. Once in 2004 and another in 2016 with the Wabinga Samoa. The thing with Adentan is that they don't retain you as a member of parliament, even if it is going to be on the ticket of a different party. So that is why we saw a situation where Kojo Eduasari of the NDC was replaced by Ni Ashimo some time ago, and Ni Ashimo subsequently lost out, and then Ramadan became the parliamentary candidate, went up against Wabinga Samoa in 2016 and lost against him, but this time he has managed to beat him. So I think it's very good news for the NDC. The Adentan constituency has always been looking very favorable for them, and so this is a sign that the constituency's changing shifts and dynamics do not necessarily affect them in an adverse manner, but it only goes to show their strength. I mean, many have argued that some members of parliament, like Yaboabinga Samoa, Boniface, and many others that we are seeing falling down at this point in time, benefited from the goodwill that Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo enjoyed going into the 2016 election. And so as a very popular presidential candidate, he was able to, or many of these parliamentary candidates at the time were able to ride on his popularity to sort of gain some prominence in their constituencies and win. But after they won, it became incumbent on them to do whatever that was required, of course within the law and legitimate means, to ensure that they recaptured or they continue to hold on to the seat for the government. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So I'll give you a classic example like what we are seeing in Prestia Huni Valley. The Prestia-Buni Valley constituency is a very interesting one because when it was first created in 1996, 96, 2000, 2004, it was an MPP winning the seat presidential. And then in 2008, NDC wins by about 57%, and then NDC wins again in 2012.
Okay, Jeff, Jerry, Joel. Joel, hold on. Let's go to the Dome Kwabenya constituency where our reporter Georgia Isi is there. We understand they are going to declare the results. So we are back after this.
Please come again. Come again.
Yeah, it's gone already.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Please sit down. You should sit down.
Yesterday, we undertook two separate elections at the same time, the parliamentary election. Under the directive of our mother, district officer for the Kwabenya constituency, we believe that these elections were conducted peacefully, and today we are declaring the result. So with the mandate given to me as the returning officer for the Kwabenya constituency under the law, CI 127, I will declare the presidential, announce the presidential election, and I will declare the parliamentary. Starting with the presidential election, we have 12 candidates contesting this election. According to how they are arranged on the ballot paper, polling 78,467 votes. Next on the ballot, we have John Dramani Mahama polling 50,136 votes. Next on the ballot, we have Christian Kwabena Andrews polling 611 votes. Next, Ivor Kwabena Street polling 75 votes. Next, Ekia Donko polling 40 votes. Then we have Henry Betlake polling 6 votes. We have Hassan Ayariga polling 22 votes. We have Kofi Percival Apalo polling 24 votes. David polling 22 votes. President Jogbenuku polling 73 votes. Anna Rollis polling 24 votes. Andrew Kwame Etedu Walker polling 19 votes. The total valid ballots is 129,519. And we have total rejected ballots of 1,352. The total vote cast amounted to 130,872. This ends the report. election. Thank you. Presidential election, sorry. Thank you. Now I'll continue the parliamentary election. As I said, I am just announcing the presidential election, but I will declare the parliamentary election. The other the ballot paper, we have Sarah Ajua Safo polling 75,041 votes. Faustina Eliklim Akurugu polling 52,262 votes. We have Tufi Kwache Asante polling 804 votes. We have Abdul Kadir 221 votes. And we have Anderson Adongo Emmanuel pulling 221 votes. Total valid amounted to 1,000. The total rejected ballot 868. Then the total amounted to 129,407. DJ, I will declare Madam Ajua Safo as the MP elected for Dominic Abidjan constituency. Thank you.
Hello?
Hello, George.
George,
can you hear me? Okay, so
Mr.
George, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So yes, you just heard the Electoral Commission returning officer mentioning the results for this constituency. That is the Dominic Abidjan constituency. I am trying to see if I can get
I am seeing
the digits for you again.
Okay, so in the meantime, I am seeing lots of journalists rushing to one particular direction. What's happening there?
So they are being allowed to take shots of the pink sheet.
Okay.
So recording the digits because a lot of them were carrying it live and the concentration was on that. So they are now trying as much as possible as they can to get the digits for verification and authenticity's sake.
Okay. So have you spotted any of the parliamentary candidates around?
Yes, the incumbent member of parliament, Honorable Sarah Ajua Safo, who has just been declared as the winner of this election, going into the Ghana's parliament for the third time, came here somewhere in the afternoon. In fact, the tensions were a little bit high. Her supporters were here, the whole place. She came with a whole jamboree. They were jubilating way ahead of the official declaration. But I think because of for security reasons, she was advised to just retreat with her supporters. So as you can see, that's what's happening here later in the afternoon before this. It was very chaotic here with a lot of supporters, but it looks like it is just us, the journalists, and a few political party representatives that were present for the official announcement. As you can see, this is the MPP rep penning his signature to declare this.
Yes, I am listening. Okay, so that's the NPP's polling agent. I believe the NDC's polling agent is also there.
He is the one standing behind the EC official, and like we said in the afternoon, they had issues with one particular polling station where they said it was overvoted, but it looks like one of them is pulling up signs. So yes, the NDC is finally going to endorse the Dominic Abidjan result.
Okay.
So as compared to the earlier where they had issues. It has been resolved.
Okay, right. So thank you. If there is nothing more to add, we will leave you here and then we'll come back later.
Sure.
Okay, right. So that's our reporter, Georgia Isi, reporting live from the Dome Kwabenya constituency, where Honorable Adjo Asafo has been declared winner of the contest. So that seat. Oh, maybe we should start the resume the conversation from there. Yes, from that point. That seat, obviously, the chances of the NPP was high.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised it has taken this long for us to get a declaration from the returning officer in that constituency. Usually, Dome Kwabenya, a lot of people are easily able to predict because of the nature of that constituency and where it has consistently voted since its creation. That constituency has always fallen for the NPP. And so, historically, we have come to know that once Sarah Adjo Asafo or whoever is elected as parliamentary candidate for the NPP, that person is likely going to go to parliament. But this election has taught us anything, is that there are no clear set in stone practices in politics. And so I think you made the point earlier when you were having the discussion with Karim about the miracle that has happened in Hohoe and in John Peter Amewu's case, where even though the president lost in respect of the presidential election in that constituency, he managed to emerge by over 5,000 votes in the Hohoe constituency against the professor he was going up against. So it tells you that even though we have come to like or to call certain constituencies strongholds of one party or the other, because of the changing dynamics and in respect of voter population and what people are doing, the way other people are moving in respect of rural urban migration and other stuff like that, it's a fast changing political map. And I'm sure at the end of the election or this election, many of the predictions that I myself have come here to sit here to say will ultimately be shot in the foot. Because yesterday we were making the point that for any of the political parties to win the presidential election and get a majority in parliament, they needed to win Greater Accra region and the Central region. And many have also added the Western region, but we didn't think the Western region was that crucial. What we are seeing now is perhaps one party may just be able to win the presidential election and not win the Greater Accra regional election in respect of the results. So based on the results that we have collated so far, it appears the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, is in the lead, but he's losing or he's trailing when it comes to the Greater Accra region in respect to the number of seats for his party and the general overview of the outlook. So then the question begs, the region that has correctly predicted the winner of the presidential election race since 1992 all of a sudden may not also be very crucial. This is because we are seeing a change in trend in the northern side of Ghana. And so historically, and pundits will say when the election commences that the northern side usually belongs to the NDC. But we are seeing that based on the preliminary results we are getting, the MPP is likely to emerge in 3 out of the 5 northern regions as the majority party in that instance. So that is a huge dynamic shift that we are seeing for the first time, and that is what makes this election all the more interesting. And so in respect of, just to circle back on the Dome Kwabenya issue, I mean, I don't think anybody is surprised that Sarah Adjo Asafo, who is Deputy Majority Leader and Minister of State in charge of public procurement, has emerged as MP-elect for the area. This is going to be her 3rd term. But there are issues that are very germane in the Dome Kwabenya constituency. And I think that perhaps all members of parliament, especially in the Greater Accra region, may take a cue from the things that are happening in Adenta and Crowwall, Ejekuku, Ladade Kotopong. I mean, it tells you that the electorate is very demanding of their members of parliament. A lot cannot be said about Yabuabenga Samoa and in respect of his ability to go to parliament, and a similar fate has befallen Boniface Sadiq. But let's look at the Ladade Kotopong seat, for instance, where the MPP won that seat through Vincent Odoto Esowa in 2016, but lost the presidential there. What we are picking now is that the president may have just won in Ladade Kotopong, but the parliamentary election was lost by a good margin by the NPP's Gerald Tete Nyanyu and the Retanado Lesoa, who was former MC for the area, is going to be the next member of parliament for that constituency. So it tells you that many of the people, especially in the Greater Accra region, have not necessarily felt the impact or have not necessarily decided to stick to this particular political party, the MPP, even looking at the way the MPP performed in the 2016 election. So, I mean, it provides a very big question for the people in the MPP, especially the Greater Accra Regional MPP. What went wrong? Because there were many who thought that apart from the 20 seats that they held, they could even add and get some few seats. They were targeting the Kun Patamansu seat, where Hopes Nadoye, Deputy National Coordinator for National Security, was contesting, who was aiming to replace Joseph Nilaya Futeagbo. And then in the Krowo constituency, they thought they should be able to hold on to that seat. And they even thought they could pick up the Odoro constituency. If you recall, the Greater Accra Regional campaign ended in that constituency, and the president was in Manchagbona on the 5th, the 5th, yes, to address a mammoth crowd in that area. But we are just hearing that the Odio constituency has been won again by Nilante Vanderpoy, as opposed to his opponent Nilante Banaman, who was contesting him again for the second time. So even those constituencies that the MPP thought they could pick up in the Greater Accra region, that hasn't happened. They have lost many of the seats that they were holding. And ultimately, I'm sure after this election, a postmortem will be held to determine what exactly was the reason why they couldn't hold on or consolidate their gains in the particular Greater Accra region. Because many thought that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that many could not go back to their homes to go and register, many decided to stay in Accra. Many of the people who work in Accra but are not from Accra decided to stay here and register here. Many thought that would inure to the benefit of the MPP. Apparently, that has not been the case. It has rather inured to the benefit of the NDC. So, preliminarily, this is what we are seeing in respect of some of the analysis. And it will be very difficult at this point in time to say that the statistical models and progressions that we're looking at from the past will make sense in this particular election, because the results are telling us a very different situation altogether, especially in the central region where, based on what we are seeing, out of the 19 seats that the MPP currently holds, they are likely to drop to 11, and the NDC is likely to shoot up from 3 to 12. And so it tells you that with such marginal increments and large increments for the NDC, generally across the coast, they had a good evening last night. And the results that came in from across the coast was very positive for them. And you can see why maybe many in their party believe that they may just be on the path to a parliamentary majority. But then those in the MPP believe that as a result of the kind of things we are seeing in the northern side of Ghana, and them also picking seats in strange places, for want of a better terminology, they may just be able to neutralize the NDC. What is clear, Abrantepa, to me, is that we will not have that kind of majority that we had in the 2016 election, where we had 169 as opposed to 107. That will not happen in this year's election. Both parties agree that whoever manages to get the majority will get a working majority. That is the terminology the former president and presidential candidate of the NDC, I must add, indicated when he put out that statement. That statement that cannot, or we shouldn't be able to construe as whether it's a victory statement or whatever it is, but he indicated that thank you for handing the NDC a working majority. So even elements in the MPP, and John Boadu, when he was addressing the press today, indicated that they believe they have picked up about 137 seats. NDC has 132, 6 are in dispute, and 1 has gone to the independent candidates who you guys were discussing earlier, Honorable Isiama of Fomena constituency. And as to whether or not he will decide to go to the MPP or he will feel, that he doesn't owe the party anything, that is also something that we'll see in the future. And so the key nature of the parliamentary races this time around presents for a lot of research, analytics, because we are seeing an uptick in the skirt and blouse constituencies, and that seems to be a very strange phenomenon. Yesterday when I was here, I told you what goes into the skirt and blouse constituencies and what allows certain people to win. But you see, we are seeing situations where, for instance, in Atebu Buamanting, the president lost the presidential election day, but the parliamentary candidate won, who is the regional minister for Bono East. Now, he won because Sanja Nanja, at the time, had a lot of run-ins with the Queen Mother and people of Atebu. And so effectively he was barred from entering the chief's palace. He was prevented from campaigning in several places. He was effectively frustrated by the people in the traditional authority there. And those people requested NDC withdraw him as their parliamentary candidate. They didn't. They decided to go with him. And eventually he lost to Kofi Amakohene. But the president still managed to lose there. In 2020, and what we are seeing from the results we are getting is that Sanja Nanja, this same person, who is still not accepted by the traditional authority, has managed to beat Kofi Amakwehine in the election in terms of parliamentary, but the president has now won the presidential. And so these are very, I mean, if you like, interesting things that it will take days for people to understand what exactly went into that particular thinking. You would think that perhaps because the NDC held on to the, won the presidential in 2016, ordinarily they should have been able to hold on to that since Sanja Nanja was reclaiming the seat for them. But that has not necessarily happened in this particular instance. So see, these are some of the things that are popping up based on the data that we are getting so far. It makes for very interesting learning and discussion, and I'm sure going forward we'll be delving further deep into some of the issues.
Right, so we understand that John Dumelo is calling for a recount. He has sent out a statement to the district electoral officer of the Ayawaso West Wogon constituency dated 8th December 2020, that's today. Says, request for ballot recount. I humbly write for your office seeking for a recount of all ballot boxes across the constituency. This is due to several irregularities that has been identified in some polling centers. One of such irregularities was swapping of my figures and that of the NPP candidates' figures at the polling centers, counting on your usual cooperation, and it's signed by John Dumelo to the district director, district electoral officer of Ayawaso West Wogon constituency. So I'll read that again. It's a request from John Dumelo to the district electoral officer of Ayawaso West Wogon constituency, and it says, I humbly write to your office seeking for a recount of all ballot boxes across the constituency. This is due to some irregularities that has been identified in some polling centers. One of such irregularities was swapping of my figures and that of the NPP candidates' figures at polling centers, counting on your usual cooperation. So until this request is granted, let's look at John Dumelo's defeat. Yes,
provisional defeat because
yes, but that's why I said until this request.
Because you're right, you're right.
So we saw the things that he did. We saw pictures of John Dumelo giving laptops, which, according to reports, were given to about 4,000 people.
Yeah, he promised 4,000 people in the constituency because he said there are a lot of university students in his constituency, so he wanted to help them in their education. So 4,000. As to whether each person got the,
that one we can't
verify exactly.
What we saw on social media was, we see one person
saying thank you and stuff like that.
We don't know how the thing went. That's why I'm saying we were told it was going to be given to 4,000 people. That's one thing that we saw him do. We saw the dredging of the gutter, which the assembly stopped him, you know, at some point in time. Doing all these and at the end of the day losing on the back of the fact that he is very popular. What might have caused it?
I mean, I have taken the position that John Dumelo and Lydia Steria Malasan have brought out the best in themselves. And so I think the people of Ayawaso West Wogon are all the better as a result of the contest that went on between the two parties. And so, I mean, I don't know if Lydia had another opponent, perhaps a weaker opponent, she would have gone to the extent with which she went to improve a lot of things in the constituency. All of a sudden, roads were tarred. Roads that had been dilapidated for a long time saw facelifts. Many other developmental projects went on in the constituency. John Dumelo was sharing laptops. He had a loan scheme to support businesswomen when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Both of them tried to do whatever they could to provide important material for people that were suffering as a result of the lockdown restrictions when the pandemic hit. So both individuals, it must be said, ran a very sophisticated campaign. And I'm surprised, quite surprised, that it has taken him this long to request for a recount. I think as early as this morning, we had indications that the EC had certified the results for Ayawaso West Wogon constituency, and it was out there in the public domain that John had lost the parliamentary race. And so I was thinking, usually when people request for a recount, they do it immediately at the collation center. So they at the collation center based on their own figures that they're getting, and that is what is explaining some of the skirmishes we are seeing in Techima North, where, I mean, the people of the NDC believe that based on their own projections and the collation from their various polling stations, they should have emerged at the end of the day. But when they went to the collation center, something different happened. And so at the collation center like that, you're allowed to request for a recount. It is your constitutional, and it's a right that has accrued you since you put yourself up for the ballot. You're allowed to request for a recount. But he's well within his rights to request for a recount, and I think he has done that. The district electoral officer, I'm sure, will grant that to him. But it remains to be seen if that will change anything. Usually, if the election is decided by just about 4100, a few hundreds of votes, that is when we can see that perhaps a recount could change something. But perhaps maybe his intelligence is telling him otherwise, and people are giving him information that he was not privy to at the time. But generally, in respect of John Dumelo and the loss Naya also West Wugon, I don't think we should be all the much surprised.
Okay, pause there, and let's go to the Greater Accra Regional Coalition Center, where our reporter Lord Edu Asari, who happens to be head of political desk, is stationed to give us a report. Lord, thanks for joining us. What's happening?
Good evening, Abrantifa. So, still here at the Greater Accra Regional Coalition Center at Safeman, and a lot of the EC officials are still collating the results. The intelligence I gather is that so far the presidential results they have from 18 constituencies, and I have with me the regional director, Mr. Kwame Amwa. He'll be giving us further details about how everything has been so far. Yeah, Mr. Amwa, good evening. Good evening. So, generally, how has the process been?
Oh, so far, I think.
Okay, so quite unfortunate. Lord's line, we are unable to connect. We'll try and reconnect again and bring you that conversation with the man in charge of the elections there. So, Joel, before we went there, we're discussing John Dumelo's fortunes. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't find that all a bit strange. The election became extremely competitive because of the fortitude of John, and a lot of credit has been given to him. He put in a good campaign, and I'm always happy when young people put themselves up to contest for political office. I think many young people should do that, and so all the credit goes to him. But ultimately, this is a seat that has been held by the MPP for a long time in respect of the parliamentary race. The only time they lost in the presidential was in 2012 when John Mahama beat now president, or at the time candidate Nana Akufo-Addo. Even in that instance, but Shemantini Jakon managed to beat Kwame Wadakon by even a smaller margin than what we saw this time around. So I also West Wugon, because of the nature of the people in that constituency. I mean, the MPP party has always been seen to be an elitist party. And so it is not surprising to see that in an area that is predominantly supposedly elitist, they always emerge. Also, MPP historically performs very well on university campuses, or where university campuses are situated. And so to see that the University of Ghana, GIMPA, UPSA, and I think there's another institution there, situates there, it doesn't necessarily derogate from the larger things that we see across the country. And so even though it was a good campaign, it was a formidable campaign that was run by him, obviously he came short to Lydia Alassane, who it must be said has worked very hard. It appears the day she was elected, after the by-election, was the day she started campaigning to retain her seat. And so even though there are many of her critics who indicate that she has not been very vocal on the floor of Parliament, I mean, she has gone about her work very quietly, and it appears the constituents are happy to repose confidence in her for another 4 years. And so I'm sure she has taken a lot of lessons from this contest. It will be foolhardy for anybody to suggest to her that she could go and sleep, and because this constituency will always be comfortable for the NPP, the work has to continue in that instance, and I'm sure that will happen. I am also hoping that John Dumelo, even that is in the situation where the recount doesn't go his way, does not rest on his oars. I mean, he doesn't give up in that instance. Perhaps if he wants to consider another constituency or that same constituency, I mean, he must be allowed to do so. He must, and I'm sure, whatever the case, ultimately the constituents decide. But if you have a good message and you have a good plan for the people, I'm sure they'll be inuring towards that.
Okay, so there is a new face, and so she once served as the deputy Tourism Minister, Deputy Tourism Minister, Honorable Jifa Gomashi, is
Ketu South.
Yes, Ketu South.
Yeah.
For the NDC, she beat the NPP's David Kwashi.
I mean, are we surprised? We are not the least surprised.
Right, so we'll come back and talk about Jifa Gomashi's victory. I'm told Lord has joined us. Lord, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, so our reporter, Lord Eduasare, joins us on phone from the Greater Accra Regional Coalition Center. Lord, let's hear you. Before the line dropped, you were speaking with the official in charge. Take it from there.
Okay, yeah, so, Ms. Amma, quick update. With everything that is happening now, the projection, we have 16 remaining. All things being equal, when do you think we can get these coming in?
Oh, I think in a couple of hours we should be able to get all the results. Yes, because when we spoke to them, all of them are on the way coming. Yes.
And when you say all of them, all 16 constituencies?
Yes, all the 16 constituencies are on the way coming to present the results here.
So your communications with them, what has been the major challenge? What has been the hold-up?
Oh, actually, it is the number of figures they are dealing with, because Accra, the police station per district is very high. So it's a long process and quite tedious and laborious. You know, they are manually done, and the such things usually take time. So that's the major reason.
Can we say it's around 6 a.m. now? Can we say by midnight or 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 7 a.m.?
Oh, I cannot give that time, but once they say they are finished and they are taking off, I'm sure it may not take long, but I cannot say the exact time they will be here. But midnight is too far. Midnight is too far.
Okay, midnight is too far. So, apparently, that was the Greater Accra Regional Director of the Electoral Commission giving us an update on the collation here at the center.
Right, where you are is an enclosed area, which I believe that if you don't have the accreditation, if you are not authorized to be there, there is no way you can enter. But what's the situation around the building outside? Are there supporters in there, or the place is quiet?
It's the building is a rather isolated one. If you do not really know this place, you may not be able to find it. There are no supporters around. All you see are vehicles of EC officials and other media houses who came to monitor and get results as well. So you won't see any party enthusiasts or any such thing.
Okay. Thank you, Lord. We'll be back for more details, and as and when we get, we will inform our viewers. So that's our correspondent, Lord Harrison Eduasare, at the Greater Accra Regional Coalition Center, telling us what's happening with respect to the results. The official in charge says they are still collating, and you know, by midnight they'll be able to declare who has won and who hasn't. So before we went on the break, Joel, we were talking about Honorable Jifa Gomashi, and you said you are not surprised.
Of course,
at all.
At all. I'm not the least bit surprised. I think that anybody could have gone to bed on December 6th, and any person could have told you that Jifa Gomashi would emerge from that contest, and you would not have been surprised if she did. And I'm happy for her. I think that she's exposed. She's well educated as well. She has done the creative arts for a while now. And to see her come to Parliament, it expands, it diversifies the nature of people we have in our Parliament. It enriches debate on the floor. And I'm always happy to see another woman come into Parliament, considering that we may risk a situation where even the numbers that we have in Parliament now will reduce in respect of the women that we have. So it's very impressive for me. And I'm sure she's winning over 70% of the vote. I mean, just before I came on, I found out that Okujeto Ablakwa won by over 80% of the vote. And I mean, that is impressive. That tells you that for a member of Parliament, even in an area where you're expected to win, when you're posting such numbers, you are very much in touch with the people in that constituency, and they're happy about your performance and your diligence in respect of your work and also your representation. And so, I mean, I'm excited for her. And I'm hoping that she represents the people of K2 South. That is Fifi Kwete's constituency. And Fifi has been a very controversial person for a long time. So, and K2 South is always on our minds. There are two constituencies where every election cycle we are waiting for the results that come from there, Bantama and K2 South. And so K2 South is always on our mind. And even though there were a few issues in respect of the voters register, if you recall, there were allegations that the government was trying to use intimidation to prevent people from coming to register. Meanwhile, people made the case that many of the people that attempted to register were not even Ghanaians in the first place. So after all this is said and done, we're expecting Jifa Gomashi to emerge as parliamentary candidate for NDC and also member of parliament elect. And we are not surprised seeing these results. It's a good thing for her, and it's another in the box for the NDC.
An interesting one that I would want us to look at. Honorable George Anda has been kicked out by the sister of Hannah Tete.
Isn't that sweet revenge? So I was wondering to myself, will George Anda's brother, if he has a brother, contest Gisela Tete in 4 years? I mean, if you know Agona West very well, you're not surprised. That constituency never retains anybody. And not Agona West, pardon me, Ewutu Senya West. Yes, that constituency never retains anybody. And so I'm not very surprised that George is out. He went in a manner that surprised, the manner in which he went. I mean, I thought the race would be much closer than what we saw. But based on the certified results we are seeing from the Electoral Commission, it appears that Gisela Tete Agbutui did a very good job. I mean, hitherto she had not been known on the political scene. It was just her sister, Hannah Tete, former Foreign Affairs Minister, who was popular, but now she has come onto the scene, apparently very loved by the constituents, and now the constituents have decided to go with her. I mean, George, I must say, has been one of the bright spots that have come into government straight from industry. So he's one of the captains of industry that was tapped by the NPP to go on their ticket. He won. It was his first time entering into politics. He won for the first time, came to Parliament, and then on his first attempt, he was also made Deputy Minister for Communications. So even though I mean, he has cause to be sad in respect of losing the election, he should take it that, of course, the same people that reposed confidence in him 4 years ago have decided to withdraw that mandate. But also, he has achieved a lot in his very short stint in politics. So that should not be an indication or a sense that he should quit it in its entirety. Obviously, there are better things to come. But what we must know now and what we must accept now is that the Tete family is back. And they are back for their seats in Ewutu Senya West.
Is there any constituency that a particular candidate won with a certain margin that you least expected, even though, I mean, whether or not the voting pattern changed?
Medina. If you the results of Medina have shocked me. I mean, yesterday when I was here, I mean, I don't want to be disingenuous. You asked me if I was pushed to the wall, who do I think will win that seat? I said Boniface was going to win. And I went on so far to say that even if Boniface lost, it wouldn't be by a huge margin. But from what we are hearing, Boniface lost by about 13,000 votes. There were a few attempts here and there at the collation center, but it's done. The election has been called for Francis Xavier Sosu, primarily because of the dynamic of the Medina constituency. One would think that because of the majority of people that live there and their religious and ethnic background, and based on the voting trends that we've seen, perhaps Boniface should have performed better. But it appears that the people had lost confidence in the ability to lead on their behalf, and they decided to go with Francis Xavier. When you spoke to the people in Boniface's camp, they were more confident. Those in Xavier's camp took the position that, well, we leave it to God. It's in the hands of God. And apparently, they were on the ground small. And so, I mean, in a general sense, I'm not surprised because this has always been an NDC seat. And like I said early on, Boniface was one of those that rode on the change wave. And Medina, for instance, in 2016 went for Akufo-Addo. But in 2020, we are seeing that it has restored back to factory settings, if you like, and gone for the NDC in both parliamentary and presidential. So in that sense, I mean, I'm very surprised by the margin with which that election was decided by. It was one of those races that I thought was close, and even if it was going to go anyway, it would have gone for Boniface. But apparently I was very wrong. The people of Medina thought otherwise, and they've shown, or they've given a clear mandate to Francis Xavier Sosu to lead.
Okay, so that's Joel. Joel is with Politico GH, Joel Telfa. And he's helping us with the analysis with respect to the parliamentary results that are coming in. Like I said, the EC has been releasing some of the winners on its Facebook page. But quickly, Jogate has won his constituency, I'm sure it's one of the constituencies that
I mean,
it was obvious.
Yeah, but yesterday
win.
when we're getting results, we're told he had been beaten. And in fact, we are informed that Dr. Grace Ayinsu-Dankwa, who contested in that constituency, intends not to accept the results of the election. She claims that before they got to the collation center, they were in the lead based on their own analysis. But then when they got there, something miraculous happened and Joe Gatti shot into the lead. So it's one of those places that we are watching keenly. And ordinarily, one would have thought that Joe, who has been there since 2004, should have been comfortable. I mean, if you look at the secondary Takoradi Metropolis, and all those 5 constituencies usually fall to the NPP. So the other 4 have been called. Sekendi, Kwesimintim, Efiam, and Takoradi proper have already been determined for the NPP. So it was Joe's constituency that we're watching closely. And it has, just as you are reading to us, the EC has now confirmed that Joe has emerged in that particular constituency. So
Joe Gatti is the Minister for Railways and Regional and Development. So he won with 26,701 as against the NDC's candidate, Dr. Grace Ayinsu-Dankwa, who had 24,527. So, like Joel mentioned, Dr. Ayinsu-Dankwa is not happy with the results. She said, Joe tempered with the results. I won the seat fair and square. I went to the grassroots, every corner of this constituency, to sell my message. This can't happen again. The incumbent cannot continue to tamper with votes. He better step aside and let me take my rightful place as the MP elect. Right. So let's do this one. So I just checked our website, GhanaWeb.com. Titus Glover has been voted out of Parliament, and you know what funnies me is the picture, the featured image that they used. Titus Glover seems to be in tears. Now he lost the Tema East constituency to the NDC's Isaac Ashai Odampton. Isaac had 41,663 as against Titus Glover, who had 32,230. Is it surprising or it was expected? Not at all. I mean, Titus Glover was viewed as one of the vulnerable incumbents in Parliament, primarily because of the nature of the Tema East community. So to see NPP, I mean, when the results started coming in and NPP lost in Krow, I knew that Tema East would also go as well. Because if you look across the board, NPP has been performing abysmally across the coast, the fishing communities, and those people, I don't know if it's by dint of coincidence or by magical applications or whatever, they always happen to vote along the same lines and similar lines all the time. So to that extent, the Tema East constituency is where you find the fishing community very predominant, and it's also one of those communities that has a lot of indigenous Ghana people, and so that is why you see that 2 of the major contenders were Gans in Titus Glover and Neil Oshai Odampton. But Odampton is very popular in the Tema East enclave. His family is well known there, so it is not surprising to see him polling ahead of Titus. Remember, Titus won that constituency by the skin of his teeth, I think some 8 years ago in 2012, by a few number of votes. And so that constituency has never always been comfortable for the NPP. It is not surprising to see that he has been ousted, as the GhanaWeb story has decided to carry it out, by the NDC opponent. If you go on social media, there are people that are playing back his video of him dancing and performing a Shatawale song and stuff like that. And so those things, I mean, it's just for our own fun and stuff like that. But I think that the deputy, and he's a deputy minister for transport, and the point has been made that several ministers and deputy ministers are falling. So far, we've noted about 20, upwards of 20 of them. Yes, quite a number. Quite a number who have who elected to contest as MPs and have lost. So the question is, did their ministerial roles hamper them or prevents them from doing their duties as first legislators before that secondary duty of being a minister or a deputy minister? I mean, another example we see is what happened to Barbara Otinjesi, Minister for Tourism. Okoboy, who we are hearing has lost in Lejekuku, confirmed now, Deputy Minister for Health. So I don't know if what the play will be for the NPP, especially if they're able to maintain a majority and win the presidential. What will happen to some of these individuals? Because when you're out of Parliament, your proximity to power is quite limited. And remember, there's a constitutional requirement that determines that the president must appoint majority of its ministers, not all,
the majority of his ministers from parliament. So when you're in parliament, the chances of you becoming a minister is higher. And the president, of course, cannot keep all of these people who have now been kicked out of parliament as ministers, because room now has to be made for people who have now been elected to parliament. So what happens to the likes of Professor John Bafo, who lost in Kofi Abrefa Buzia's hometown in Wenchi? What happens to the likes of George Anda and Alexander Kojokom Aban, who is also who both double as deputy ministers of communication? And so all these things will be very topical and will be operational on the mind of the president if he is re-elected and declared by the EC as such, and that will also be very interesting for us to watch. So for me, Titus Glover out of parliament, not a shock. NDC has trade, and Raphael Tufo is also